Good morning, happy Friday, folks. Hope you're doing well. It's a feel good Friday. Excited to be with you. I'm sad I wasn't with you yesterday. Your boy's internet was out the whole day, and I may have had a couple things to say to the internet provider about that one because I was so sad to not be with you and missing out on 2 videos in the process. However, do you know what that means? It means that we get 2 great shows today, and this morning is going to be action-packed. It's going to be wild because it was interesting. I found yesterday that the left all of a sudden cares about free speech. That was new to me. That's a little different than what they've been talking about the past several years, so we'll be covering that as well as a heated CTV panel covering the Jimmy Kimmel issue. And then, guess what? Turns out there's details that came out last night that people are like, oh, whoops, there was more going on behind the scenes than everyone thinking that it was Trump who got Kimmel canned, huh? Okay, interesting. We'll be covering that. And as well as talking about government officials just doing weird things. Freeland obviously saying goodbye and going off to Ukraine now. And Parliament's like, not so fast. You're coming right back to talk about this BC Fairs BS that you knew about for a very long time. We'll be covering that as well. And last but not least, there was a young man here in Nova Scotia who pushed nationalism, who pushed being proud of one's country and actually changed the face of government policy in this province. It's an encouraging story, and we're going to finish off on that. Welcome to the LA Podcast. I'm your host, Josh. If you get any value from today's episode, take the time to like, share, and subscribe. It helps us to grow, helps us to get to new audiences, and helps people see that there's something different than what the mainstream media has to offer. Now, let's get into our first story, shall we? The left was not too happy with what happened with Jimmy Kimmel. And we kind of get you up to speed right now. Jimmy Kimmel hopped on his show on Monday night, talked about how the assassin who took Charlie Kirk was MAGA affiliated. We all know that. And the MAGA crowd's all mad at us now, but that's not true. And he made a lot of insinuations that were simply not true. Made some statements that were completely false, especially off of verified accounts from news outlets throughout the weekend before the Monday night. And he actively knew that the shooter was not MAGA affiliated, but he went on live television to say it anyways. And so the issue that people have had is, well, there's been a lot of fallout since then because he actively lied in a very tenuous, intense moment in American culture and as well as North American culture across the world. And he decided to try to score cheap political points in the process. And well, at that point, he lost his job because people were outraged with how egregious it all was. People are pretending as if there was a joke. He was just making jokes. He was just making jokes and he got canceled because of making jokes. Quite frankly, as far as I'm concerned, it had nothing to do with the joke he made about Trump. It was the fact that he went on national television and lied in direct contrast with what news stations were reporting in corroboration of what the actual shooter was and who he was and what his motives were. And Kimmel knew that and wanted to drive a narrative to sow more divide in the country. And well, he got caught in the process. And people were upset. Well, he just said some jokes. He was just joking. Andrew Coyne says, and says corporate media in the U.S. just can't prostrate themselves before Trump fast enough, referring to a New York Times article talking about Jimmy Kimmel being pulled off air. So Andrew Coyne wasn't too fond of this. And then we had Vicky Campbell, crazy far left account on X, says America is totally effed. I'm so glad I don't live there. Ooh, I might have something to tell you about that there, Vicky. There's some interesting things happening here that because you're on the left, you're not impacted by. But if you don't think the same things the government does, which we know that you definitely believe what the government does, well, you become an enemy of the state up here in Canada. But hey, I digress. The left was not too happy about this situation and said it was an infringement of free speech. All right. So you know the story, you know what's going on. New York Post reported Jimmy Kimmel's ratings were plummeting before ABC suspended him for Charlie Kirk comments. Jimmy Kimmel's late night show was bleeding viewers before Disney-owned ABC pulled the plug and suspended him for his comments on the Charlie Kirk assassination. Nielsen data showed sharp summer declines and a year-long slide that leaves him trailing late-night rivals such as Fox News' Greg Gutfeld and CBS star Stephen Colbert. This guy was losing to Colbert, and Colbert got his show turfed. He's doing worse than the guy who got his show canceled. Yikes. According to monthly Nielsen figures, Jimmy Kimmel Live dropped to just 1.1 million total viewers in August total. Only got 1.1 million viewers in August total. For a big broadcast network and station, those views are horrendous. Down 43% from January's 1.95 million, his August household rating of 0.35 marked the weakest showing of the year. The advertiser coveted 18 to 49 demo also created. Kimmel averaged only 129,000 viewers in that bracket in August, off from 212,000 in January and less than half in his June peak of 284,000. With his ABC contract set to expire next year, the slump raises questions about whether Jimmy Kimmel Live can regain momentum against Colbert, Fallon, and cable insurgents. It's not, look, 129,000, the key demo is terrible total. Is terrible. It is apples to oranges comparison, but just to give you kind of an idea, is the key demo for us, 18 to 49 on this show in particular, we do about 2.5 million views per month. And that's a show that appears twice a day for about 15 minutes each, a one-man show on YouTube. Again, apples to oranges because cable is a bit of a different beast than the online game, but just to give you an idea of how bad those views really are. Again, we have about 2.5 million in the key demo. We have about 4 million views per month total on this show. So it gives you an idea of how rough it is. But in comparison to the people that he's fighting against, Kimmel's deal with ABC runs through industry reports put his salary at $15 million to $16 million a year, with some outlets noting that the bonuses can push his annual earnings above $20 million. And this is what I'm saying. If you are bleeding viewers this bad, and that's how much your host is making, I'm not making $15 million a year, to tell you that much. I'm not making that much, but he is. And that's not including his staff, joke writers, people who run the cameras, people who run the studio, all of it. Like, that doesn't cover any of that. Like, that's not including any of that. And you're only getting 129,000 people in the key demo. And this is why they say 18 to 49 is the key demo, is because that's the demo that spends money. That's people who have the money to spend on things that they see in advertising. The Jimmy Fallon Show lagged behind with 1.37 million total viewers, but narrowly trailed Kimmel in the demo with 220,000. Fox News' Gutfeld remained cable's late-night ratings juggernaut in 2024, averaging 2.76 million viewers through the program airs at 10 p.m. when more viewers are awake. Tells you a lot we need to know. Kimmel, Colbert, Fallon are dropping like rocks. And you know when it happened is when these networks decided we're just going to make Trump jokes. We're just going to slag on Trump. And these late night shows forgot who they were serving. They forgot who they are, which was supposed to be an escape from the daily life. It wasn't to remind you of what was happening in daily life. And then to talk about the same politician over and over and over again was, quite frankly, embarrassing. And so a lot of people are attributing Kimmel's being put on hiatus because of Trump and because the FCC commissioner saying, well, you can do this the hard way, you can do it the easy way. Well, Trump got him canceled. This is the attack on free speech. Was it? Because after Kimmel said that on Monday night, it was reported by the Wall Street Journal that advertisers and affiliates soon called the network expressing concern about Kimmel's show. Executives at St. Clair and Nexstar, owners of more than 60 local ABC stations, told network leaders that after Carr's remarks that they would indefinitely preempt the show starting that night, moves that would hobble the program's reach. They were already talking about preempting the show before the comments came out from the FCC. This is an attack on free speech. Advertisers already knew this was bad taste, and they said, get us out of here. We're canceling your slots for now. This is craziness. It was irresponsible and stupid. And they have the audacity to say Trump is impacting this and Trump had him thrown off. This is totalitarianism, this is fascism. Actually, your advertisers are the ones who realized, oh, Charlie Kirk was a beloved figure. This is a bad look. And you actually lied about it on air. We don't want to be a part of that. Actions have consequences. But CTV aired a panel on this yesterday. You had Christy Clark, who's the former premier of BC and also a person who may have lied about being a conservative member during the leadership race for the Liberal Party this past year. And you had Lisa Raitt there on the right-hand side, bottom right-hand corner, who was the former federal minister in a Stephen Harper government. And, well, we start off with Christy Clark giving her 2 cents on Jimmy Kimmel. And then Lisa Rait's like, all right, I got something to say about this. This is interesting.
This is absolutely alarming to me. It is. I can't describe to you how worrisome it should be that the most powerful government in the world has decided that they're going to go after the comics and the actors and the people who offer free speech and stimulate debate, who have always been on the front lines of criticizing politicians, that they can get canceled by the government in a free and democratic society. This kind of thing happens in Russia. It happens in China. It happens in
Canada?
North Korea.
Canada
We have
next?
never seen something like this happen in the United States. And the idea that America is free is now, I think, something that we all should very seriously question. When the President of the United States and his appointees can come out and say, we don't believe you have the right to say something that might have offended them on air, because we don't like it, not because it was wrong, not because it was libelous, but because they don't like the politics of it. Every autocrat in the world has gone after the comics and the actors and the theater practitioners first. That's what they go after. And I watch this from, and I don't care what side of the partisan divide you're on. This isn't good for anybody, not on the right, not on the left, because when you start stifling free speech and you start deciding that there are some things that are acceptable for the government to have you say, we don't have free speech anymore. And I just think of all of the complaints that people might have against Donald Trump, I would say that this is the single worst and most alarming thing that he's done since he became president again.
So there's Christy Clark, their liberal, left-wing, believing, all of a sudden trying to feign that she believes in free speech and how it's such an attack on democracy and all this, as per usual. Again, if it's someone on their side, it's an attack. When it happens to someone who aligns with the political right, she gets real quiet, real quick. We don't want to talk about the liberal government over the past year has been trying to push legislation so that they can censor what people say on social media. We're not going to talk about that. Not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about what's been happening to Tamara Lich, Chris Barber, and how our court system's been weaponized against them to the highest degree because of political means. Okay, we're not going to talk about that. We're not going to talk about the bank accounts that were frozen. Not going to talk about that for simply having a different perspective than what the government was holding. You were very quiet during that point. But I digress. I'm going to leave it there because I don't want to steal the rest of Lisa Rait's thunder on this.
I don't think that this is the first time a TV personality has been taken off the air because of something that they said. And it certainly has happened in Canada. Don Cherry is a great example. It's
just a heads up. Look at Christy Clark's face when Lisa even says that. And then they'll go back to full screen of Lisa Raitt and stuff. But when you can, if you can, just look at Christy Clark's facial expressions and how offended she is, how egregious she feels like Lisa Raitt's response is. And she just simply doesn't like the truth because she does view this from a one-side perspective.
happened in the United States with another comedian. Roseanne Barr is an example. You can't tell me that this hasn't happened before. It's happening at a time right now when different people are having very strong opinions on it. I think James laid out the table extremely well. For me, if I had a show that was getting 129,000 viewers a night, that's it. That's what the ratings show. I would take my first opportunity to jettison it. He's getting hardly any views from anybody in the 18 to 49 demographic. That's the people who purchase things. The younger generation doesn't know who Jimmy Kimmel is unless he's doing some hits on TikTok. It was a good excuse and an opportunity for them to retool and, I don't know, put on an infomercial at that time of night. Who knows? They may get more viewers that way. So what's happening, though, is we've turned it into a cultural moment and saying it's because of authoritarianism, when this has happened on both sides of the divide for many, many years. Sometimes you say something and you are actually held accountable for it, and it's done through your employments.
Yeah, I think I sort of take what everybody's saying. I know there's some disagreement, but if I...
Just see Chrissy Clark's face, and you could hear the huffing throughout Lisa talking. She was so disrespectful, so condescending, so unprofessional in this sense. Hurts to hear the truth, I guess. Aren't you the person also lied about being conservative? Shut up. I'm like, don't want to hear it. It's honestly ridiculous. And Lisa Raitt was just stating facts on this. The show stinks. They're losing viewers. It was what it was. However, sure, the viewership is bad. We looked at what the viewership was. However, news has now broken that the advertisers were the first big hit that they received. However, it wasn't all outside forces that forced Jimmy Kimmel off the air. We learned, CNN reported, that the decision to yank Jimmy Kimmel's show off air wasn't quite as rash as one might think. The issue has been brewing all week throughout the executive ranks at Disney and ABC. Ever since Kimmel made comments during his Monday night monologue after Charlie Kirk's suspected killer and, as he called Trump supporters, the MAGA gang, Kimmel's remarks Monday attracted ire from the critics on the right, which put it on the Disney's radar. On Tuesday's show, Kimmel doubled down, saying many in MAGA land are working very hard to capitalize on the murder of Charlie Kirk. But it wasn't until Wednesday afternoon, after FCC Chair Brendan Carr went on a conservative podcast and threatened to pull ABC affiliate broadcast licenses, that the matter really escalated. Then Nexstar, the station group which airs Jimmy Kimmel Live in approximately 24 markets, announced they would not air the show. Carr publicly stating that Disney was at risk to lose its local broadcast licenses was a real serious threat for all of ABC, as a source familiar with the situation told CNN. This isn't about Jimmy Kimmel Live, it's about the ABC as a whole and shows and its employees. Another source privy to ongoing conversations at the company said. A veteran television news producer who is not employed by ABC told CNN there's more terrifying circumstance for a broadcast entity than the threat of the SEC fine or worse, that the agency could move to revoke the station's broadcast licenses. So again, keep this in mind. All this happened, the Monday night monologue hits, Jimmy doubles down on Tuesday, and then the threat comes from the FCC shortly after that. And again, they were going to keep him on. It was a little scary, sure. It was like, okay, we got, they're playing ball here. We need to kind of hone down what is really being said and being controlled and what is being said in terms of making sure we, even in jokes terms, you can say jokes, just joke accurately and not try to push lies for the sake of a political narrative. That's an idea. But again, there was nothing, even up to the FCC threat, that anything had happened that had caused for Jimmy Kimmel to be put on hiatus. It wasn't until Jimmy himself did this. According to one of the individuals familiar with the situation, Kimmel was prepared to deliver his monologue on his show Wednesday night and planned to address the right-wing backlash to his remarks made earlier in the week regarding the politicization of Kirk's killing. This individual describes Kimmel's planned monologue as very hot, taking aim at the MAGA base. It was then that Disney executives had conversations with Kimmel about taking down the temperature of his monologue, according to the individual. Nexstar announced its plan to pull Kimmel's show at the same time. That's when Disney CEO Bob Iger and Disney Entertainment co-chairman Dana Walden made the decision to preempt the show definitely in hopes of protecting Kimmel and the Disney brand from accelerating the controversy. Jimmy Kimmel was going to double down on his comments from Monday. And as someone said close to this situation, said his monologue was going to be very hot. It was not going to help. ABC pulled him off to protect him from himself. Wasn't Trump. The FCC stuff didn't help, sure. But again, he outright reported lies on a show. That is negligence and unprofessional. And yes, should be looked at scrutiny by the FCC, especially if you're on public airwaves. I truly believe that. But Jimmy Kimmel saying, I'm going to go back right at him harder. And he wouldn't listen to anybody. ABC's like, well, you're giving us no other choice right now. Things are really hot right now in the country. Country is either at civil war point or just about there. And you only want to add fuel to the fire. We got to pull you off, dude. This is crazy. There's one thing about free speech, and there's a whole other about responsibility of your speech. And this was irresponsible. And Jimmy Kimmel, well, had it coming. And I stick to by what I said yesterday. I will never advocate for the free speech of somebody who doesn't believe in free speech themselves, who only use their free speech to police the other side. That means you don't believe in free speech, but you cry free speech when people are coming at you now. No interest. But for me, this wasn't a free speech issue. This was someone who was being irresponsible with the quote-unquote platform they had and pushing lies, dissension, and adding fuel to an already hot fire when it comes to politics in this country. And that went a lot longer than I thought it was going to. I'm going to jump to my last story. I'm going to save the Freeland story for this afternoon segment, just because it's fairly interesting. We'll jump to a Feel Good Friday segment, shall we? Nova Scotia Education Minister orders schools to play national anthem after students pen letter. Nova Scotia's Education Minister has issued a directive to all public schools in the province, stating that they are required to play the national anthem every morning. The order comes from Brendan McGuire, received a letter from a group of grade 12 students at Charles P. Allen High School in Bedford, Nova Scotia, who expressed their concerns that the high school no longer plays O Canada, which that tells you everything you know about our public institutions here, right? Yep. Casey Min, who immigrated to Canada. This was a little frustrating. CTV News. It wasn't. He didn't emigrate. He immigrated. I'm going to choose to believe that was a mistake, but if it wasn't, that tells you everything you need to know. Emigration means when you leave the country, you leave Canada, in this case, our country, you leave Canada to go somewhere else. Immigration, when someone comes from another country and comes to Canada. That's an immigration. Emigration is leaving, immigration is coming. But they wanted to act as if he was emigrating from South Korea, which is a wild statement. But anyways, Casey Min, who immigrated to Canada from South Korea in 2019, helped write the letter. I haven't heard any anthem since my first day here in high school, which would have been 2 years ago, Min told CTV News. I think it's important to be patriotic. I'm an immigrant here, says it himself. I thank this country for all the opportunities I have, so I think it's really important to stand up for our values and patriotism for Canada. Min says his junior high school played the national anthem daily, so he was surprised and disappointed when he didn't hear it played in his high school. So he and two other students decided to write a letter, which was also signed by dozens of students, to the education minister. O Canada, a patriotic symbol and a hallmark of our national identity, has been missing from our corridors and classrooms, the letter reads. This omission to play the anthem is problematic in of itself, as it works to undermine the tradition, continuity, and national pride, as well as the sacrifices of men and women of the armed forces and so many others who have fought to secure the Canada which we love and cherish today. McGuire told CTV News Atlantic he learned a few schools were not playing the anthem daily, but couldn't say how many. He isn't sure why the school stopped playing O Canada, but says he wants all schools in the province following the same policies. And this is your Feel Good Friday moment. A student standing up for patriotism of his beloved country. A young man who left South Korea and came to Canada. An immigrant who is showing more desire and love for his country than the people who actually were born and live here. This is an inspiring story. And hats off to this young man for standing up for a country that he truly believes in. Respect. And I hope that we can make this country be a place that is worthy of respect moving forward more and more every day. But it is embarrassing how O Canada was jettisoned across high schools in Nova Scotia. We don't know how many, but there was enough. It took an immigrant from South Korea to pen a letter saying, what the heck? I love this country. I love that I moved here. I want to sing the national anthem. And because of his letter, a directive was sent by the Nova Scotia government to schools across the province that they are to play O Canada every morning. All it takes is one person to get people on board and see true change. And that, my friends, is mighty inspiring. But anyways, I'll see you this afternoon. Have yourselves a good one. I'm out.